Thank you very much. Good evening. It's a pleasure being here. I take it that since it's Las Vegas, I have to gamble. Okay, but
well, just being here is a gamble.
Yeah, well, it's a risk. We used to ask my mother, "Mom, what are you, an optimist or a pessimist?" And she said, "Of course I'm an optimist. Today is much better than tomorrow." So I have a kind of a different approach to the threats, dangerous problems. I see opportunities. I mean, seeing everything as a shadow, seeing everything as a darkness, well, it's a way of life, but I live a different life. I just come here from Turkey, which was an amazing couple of days in a kind of Erdoganist governmental think tank, speaking about the region, which was a different point of view. I mean, you have Muslims and Muslims from all over the place talking about what's going on there, and what you feel is, what we see as a big threat, all of a sudden, maybe there is an opportunity there. Maybe the Turkish model, which is a kind of a very interesting one and developing one, they like to export it to Egypt, and all of a sudden, Egypt works in a kind of a very interesting democratic process. And imagine that the Middle East will have Turkey, Egypt, maybe Syria later, Tunisia and Libya, working under the Turkish model, which is economically very stable and promising. There is a democratic process. It's a different opening to the region. I see it as a window. Iran is no doubt a long-term issue, and still it is open for two different observations. The first one is, you hear rumbles, you hear the elephants walking in the forest. It is not just the students and the Green Revolution of a couple of years ago. Now it's the merchants of the bazaar. That's the hardcore economy who really say we're not happy with it. So it means that the international sanctions and the international pressure on Iran works. The second is, as an Israeli, I would like to be more reluctant than most of our political system. We do not have to jump to the head of the line. It should not become an Israeli issue. It is and it should be a world issue. It's an issue for the Muslim neighbors around Iran, from Pakistan on one hand to Egypt and Saudi Arabia and the Gulf on the other hand. It's an issue for the Chinese and the Russians. It's an issue for the Europeans. It's an issue for the Americans. It is an issue for us. I don't like the way our political system across the board jumped to the head of the line and said, it's ours, it's ours, it's ours. Let the world first do what the world has to do, and then we shall move onwards. All in all, I will say that yes, a Middle East without a nuclear armament is a better Middle East. Is it possible? There is a big question mark that is never debated and never discussed, and this is Israel, who has a denied arsenal. It's the most official denied arsenal. I think it was President de Gaulle who once said, nothing is official till denied. So this was so many times. It was so many times denied, so it's officially official. This arsenal was an asset for so many years. I'm not at all sure that for the next couple of decades, this nuclear Israeli denied arsenal will be always an asset. Maybe it becomes a liability.
Okay, Dennis, why don't you go ahead, and then I'm going to come back, because you really are optimistic, aren't you?
Of course, I'm a utopian as well, and a left-winger. Yeah.
Egypt is governed by a man who's recently demanded of the United States. In fact, the first thing that he said after he was elected, President Morsi, was that the United States should release the blind sheikh who was responsible for the first Twin Towers bombing. And these people fill me with less optimism than my distinguished colleague this evening. I have very little optimism with regard to the Middle East at this time. I think that Israel is surrounded by cultures that are largely benighted. The Arab intellectuals who released the United Nations report some years ago acknowledged that, I think it was Greece that prints more books translated from foreign languages than the entire Arab world, from Morocco to the Gulf. Of course, if you say these things today, people call you Islamophobic, or I'm surprised we don't have a term Arabophobic, but somebody will undoubtedly come up with it, to still voices that try to tell difficult things that exist in the world. An Israeli has really two choices: to wake up and deny reality and be optimistic, or to confront reality and be a bit sad. Most people prefer to be happy. Not all. I've written a book on happiness, and I do an hour a week on my radio show on happiness. I speak on happiness a great deal. There are people who prefer to be unhappy, but they're a small segment of the human population. Israelis are confronted with a terrible issue, and I think that I understand, and I'm opposed to it, so I'm not psychoanalyzing, again, my distinguished colleague this evening, but I understand the urge to believe that, gee, the people surrounding me really don't want to destroy me. It's a very desirable thing. You don't want your little girl or your little boy to wake up thinking that his neighbors want him dead, think that he is the child of apes and monkeys, and so there is a great yearning to find any bright spot that exists. I have that yearning too. I would love that to be. I have no great attachment to the permanent status of the West Bank as being part of Israel, but I do have a very deep desire to see Israel survive as a Jewish state. I interviewed in Ramallah last year the chief spokesman of the Palestinian Authority. He actually denied to me, I have it recorded, I played it on my radio show. He denied that there is a Jewish people. There is no such thing as a Jewish people. Remember, Yasser Arafat said Jesus was not a Jew, Jesus was a Palestinian. And I have always, having written a book on anti-Semitism, I am well aware of Jesus being a very good litmus test to find pure anti-Semitism. When one denies the Jewishness of Jesus, one is engaged in anti-Semitism. Whether it was a Christian who did it in the Middle Ages, or a Muslim doing it now, or Hitler, who said that Jesus was an Aryan. This is what Israel is surrounded with. And so I'm not terribly optimistic. One day, perhaps, Arabs will decide that destroying Israel is not important, but rather building the Arab world. The day that Arabs decide that will be the greatest day in modern Arab history. The preoccupation with Israel, with a Jewish state the size of El Salvador, is the curse of modern Arab life. So we do have a different view on this. And one more thing, on the notion of it's ours. It's a certain irony here. I, for example, I speak to non-Jews most of my life, through my radio and through my lecturing. Jewish life doesn't book me nearly as much as it used to because I'm a conservative, and for much of Jewish life in Reform and conservative synagogues, conservative Jews are not allowed to be invited. This is a fact of life, not an opinion.
Less true than 5 years ago, perhaps.
As true as 5 years ago. But I'll be happy. I'll be happy to discuss that with you. Just ask John Podhoretz when he's invited to, or any of the conservative Jews like myself. But that's a side issue, though not an insignificant one. We'll talk about American Jewry. Anyway, I tell non-Jews all the time, you are fools, and I use that language. You are fools, you non-Jews, if you think that the threat to Israel is just a Jewish or just an Israeli problem. That's exactly why 55 million people died in World War II, because you fools dismissed Hitler as just a Jewish problem. If you dismiss Ahmadinejad as just Israel's problem, you are repeating the error of the 1930s.
Let me just ask you one quick question, then I want to turn to Avram, because we're not going to be politically correct here, and there is an Arab problem that needs to be discussed. But first, Dennis, you don't actually think that Ahmadinejad has any power, do you?
Do I think that he personally has power?
No, really, this is an important question.
No, it's not an important question.
Oh, of course it is.
What matters is, no. The leading Ayat Khamenei has power. The leaders of the Islamic Republic have power. If he is just a figurehead, it doesn't matter. They don't differ from his belief that the greatest mitzvah for an Iranian Shiite Muslim is to destroy Israel.
Because, it's always interesting to me how people talk about Ahmadinejad a lot as if he actually had power. He doesn't. The supreme leader does have power. And in fact, you realize also that on the nuclear issue, the supreme leader his views are unknown. The leadership of the Green Movement, all of whom I interviewed the last time I was in Iran, take a position that's more militant than Ahmadinejad does. They were against the negotiations, against the 20% deal. Ahmadinejad was in favor of it. So we're talking about real complexities here, and let's try and keep the Nazis out of it for
No. The only reason I brought the Nazis in was to say what I tell non-Jews, that dismissing Jew haters as just the Jews' problem is a foolish, suicidal notion of non-Jews. That's all. That's the only reason I raised that issue.
But I would make a distinction between the German military might, and this is a question I want to go back to Avram, because one thing you said that I thought was questionable is that you compared Egypt to Turkey. Now, Turks are not Arabs. Iranians are not Arabs, they're Persians. And in Turkey there is a history of governance, a history of integrity. It's a real country. I don't mean integrity in terms of honesty. I mean that it's a real country with real borders. It has an educational tradition, very much unlike the Arab states. And the people I know who really study the Arab lands and the Arab culture are very concerned about whether or not the traditions of education, rule of law, rights of women, and a lot of the other basic human rights that we have now seen are essential to creating democracies can come to exist in the Arab world. Now, what evidence do you have, Avram, that for your optimism?
Can I react to both or just to him?
You can react to.
Yeah.
I'd like you to react to my question.
I was so many years in politics, so it makes no difference what you ask. I have my answers anyway.
Okay.
So, so just
so much for me.
I'll try to combine them both. Mr. Prager, I listen to you very carefully, and I realize that it's much more comfortable to be a pessimist in America. Being a pessimist in Israel is a bit too pessimist, okay? Being a pessimist here, it's comfortable. So it's okay, but I don't buy this pessimism, neither buy optimism. I read reality differently. At what sense? First, I don't like the equation of the Second World War, which is broadcasted massively from the current Israeli government and well echoed at the conservative circles of America, etc. By the way, I have a definition for you apropos psychoanalyzing the self. I mean, I don't volunteer, but I offer you as a friend. You know who is a conservative? A liberal with a teenage daughter. Okay? So I have a couple of. Having said that,
there's a lot of truth to that.
But I don't know if you have daughters. I suspect you're not that much of a liberal. But nonetheless, I don't like this equation because of two major reasons. The first one is when you come and say it's 38 all over again. Is it? Did we have a state in 48? Did we have such an omnipotent power in 38? Did we have 209 bombs in 38? Did we have the unequivocal support of the most important powers and superpowers in the world in 38? Did we have even the Catholic Church changing the dogma vis-a-vis the Jews in 38? The answer is no. And therefore it's not 38. And if you say we are 38, you actually say that the entire Zionist endeavor failed. And I say we did not. We have issues, we have challenges. Easy it is not. We have capabilities, it is possible. But to bring us back to the Holocaustic discourse and say Israel was, is, and will be driving its strategy as from the trauma, and therefore forever we shall have a trauma strategy rather than trust strategy, that's an awful suggestion for a state. And it's an awful suggestion for a people, either as a political analyst or a political leader. The second is Turkey and the Arab world, etc. We don't know. The jury is out. I mean, revolutions are taking longer than a year and a half. So you look into it. You look into it and you say, listen, what do I prefer? Do I prefer Israel and America to continue their love affair with tyrannies in the region because it's good and convenient, and therefore we buy our convenience at the price of oppression of other people around us? Or do we prefer to have difficult but decent relations with our neighbors that part of them and some of them really fought for liberation? I didn't say that Egypt and Turkey are the same, but I know that there is a motivation in Turkey and there is a readiness in Egypt in certain parts to explore potential model for democracies in the Middle East which are not American model democracies. America tried with its conservative, right-wing Republican presidency of George W. Bush to impose the beauty of American democracy on Iraq top-down, and failed because democracies are growing bottom-up. And there are seeds there, and they're growing, and we have to help them, and we have to communicate with them. If you come with power and aggression and say that's the only model in the world, maybe it will not work. There are other models, and the region, as well as other regions outside of the Middle East, see the world as a polycentered world rather than American-centered one, a Western-centered one. And we have to listen to it rather than patronizing it. And when I say all of this together, I will say the follows. For me, there are two discussions. The first is about the Israeli strategy. I mean, it's very interesting. You ask, what do you say about, what is your taking about what's going on in the Middle East? And immediately we speak about Israel. The Middle East is not just about Israel. It's about so many other things for the West, for the locals, for the East, for whatever it is. The first is about Israel. When I'll ask you, Joe, tell me, what's the security, what's the strategy of the state of Israel? You say bombs and submarines and planes and paratroopers and whatever. And I would say, no. That's not a strategy. These are tools. Did Israel ever had, publicly or governmentally level, any discussion about its strategy towards the Middle East, i.e., do we want to have a crusades philosophy, which is high walls around us and totally separated from the area, and that's it? Or do we want to integrate in the region? And what are the prices for each? And what are the tools you need for each? And as long as this discussion doesn't happen, and strategy is military-only consideration, the question is a lame question. Last but not least, we have to get used to the idea that maybe that within the next decade, Israel will not be the only democracy in the Middle East. And we have to get used to the idea that as for now, as much as Israel within the borders of the Green Line is a fantastic democracy, Israel occupies between the Jordan and the Mediterranean the same amount of people, directly and indirectly, that voted under our occupation in the last 45 years, less time technically than individuals in Damascus. Keep it in mind when you speak about being an optimist or a pessimist. For how long can you maintain and support and continue with this kind of an argument when it is a hollow one because you have such an awful problem in the midst of your being?
you're making me feel a little bit like Jim Lehrer.
I'll shut up.
Let's separate these three. Dennis, I'll let you have a rebuttal, and then let's drill down on each one of these three problems.
A very interesting thing Avraham Burg here said, it's easy to be pessimistic in America. What you did was, it seems to me, entirely confirm my point about how tough it is to be pessimistic in Israel. That was my whole point. And therefore, you don't want to be pessimistic. You don't want your children to grow up that way. So you have what I believe is a false optimism. But your comment only confirmed for me, not for me, confirmed in terms of logic what I said. I will add that in any event, whether it's easy or difficult to be a pessimist in America, I'd like to just say my own policy my entire life, and my entire life has been very active in Jewish life, I have never believed that American Jews should tell Israel what to do. And
You're jumping the gun on the third
okay,
area.
all right, then I won't jump the gun. I'll just say that I hold that for whether there was a left-wing or a right-wing prime minister. If I want to influence Israeli policy, I should make Aliyah. But I will leave that for now. The entire Zionist endeavor failed if Israel is in danger of being destroyed. It's a non sequitur to me. I never understood the Zionist endeavor, and I am sure you don't, as solely that Israel can survive, that a Jewish state can survive no matter who attacks it with what weapon. The Zionist enterprise was the ingathering of the Jewish people to have one place on earth where they determined their own fate and where non-Jews did not. That's what I understood as the Zionist enterprise. You offered a very interesting duality, either a trust strategy or a trauma strategy. I don't believe in either. I don't trust, and I don't operate from trauma. I try to operate from reality. I prefer a reality strategy to either a trauma strategy or a trust strategy. As regards high walls, sometimes high walls save lives. An American poet said, good fences make good neighbors, or high fences make good neighbors. Good. Unfortunately, while any normal person, Jew or not, would love there not to need to be a barrier, it has saved Israeli lives, and that is not inconsequential to me. I do not want a Middle East without nuclear weapons. I want the Middle East where only Israel has nuclear weapons. And finally, the notion of America failing in Iraq because you cannot impose democracy top-down. Yes, you can, and we did phenomenally successfully in Japan and in Germany. The reason that we were not able to impose democracy in Iraq is because of Arab values, not because of American values.
Let me stop you right there, because this raises a really important question, and it's to my mind, this is the most important question coming out of Arab Spring. The reason why we were able to help create a democracy in Germany and Japan is that they were discrete, actual places. There was always a Germany, there was always a Japan. What we have in the Middle East is a series of countries that aren't really countries. We have a series of countries whose borders were drawn by Europeans in 1918 at the end of the First World War. And, they were slapped together. Iraq was Winston Churchill's invention. He created it out of 3 satrapies, provinces of the Ottoman Empire. Now we have in Syria a situation where we have a minority sect ruling, a majority, 80% Sunni, and you have Kurds up in the north. And when I interviewed Assad 6 years ago, he said to me at the time, he said, I'm really worried about what's happening in Iraq because the Kurdish area of Iraq has become semi-independent, and I'm afraid that my Kurds, my Kurds, are going to go join those guys. And so it seems to me that the immediate question isn't whether we can create democracies in fictional countries, but how this is going to actually shake out in the end. Because we're at a point now, I think, Dennis, don't you think, that these people are going to create their own countries and their own borders, and it's going to be done without the imposition of Western neo-colonial power? And how do you think the United States should respond to these new realities? Isn't the fact of Kurdistan more real than the fact of Jordan?
Yes, but your points are, the facts are accurate, but the conclusions are different than mine. If the Middle East were divided into completely homogeneous groups, Alawites have a strip of land the size of New Jersey, Shiites have a strip of land the size of Texas, Sunnis have a size of land of Alaska, nobody has anybody else, it wouldn't be one whit different. Iran is largely homogeneous and has no liberty. It's a values question. And tragically, Islam has not created a world of liberty. It never did, and it hasn't today. I believe Islam can be reformed, but in its current state, anyone who wants a Sharia-based state, whether he is Sunni or Shiite, is anti-liberty.
And so what my position is, my question is, how, given that, and I'm going to ask Avraham for his point of view on this as well, given these new and changing realities, what should be the United States' posture toward these places? Should we continue to arm Egypt? Should we continue to, is the president doing the right thing by standing back in Syria and waiting to see how it shakes out? What can we do, since clearly in their minds the era of us imposing our views and our values on the region is over?
Well, I did want Avram to respond because I feel I had the last two, but since you're posing it to me, I will just say that when the United States was supportive of the dictatorship of the Shah, Iranians lived better. They had more freedom, women had more rights. There was a better world for the average Iranian. So this equation of America with a non-democratically elected person in any given place as equals bad has not been morally true. I wish it were morally true. Then all we have to say is we will leave all the not perfectly elected leaders we support, and those countries will be better. Sometimes it may be true, sometimes it isn't. In Iran, it was not true. It is a tragedy that, to the extent that we could, and I'm not sure we could stop it, but to the extent that we could have stopped it, it is a tragedy for the Iranian people first and foremost that we allowed the Shah to fall to the medieval barbarians who run Iran today.
Avram, this is really interesting, by the way. We have a perfect pessimist and a perfect optimist. Avram, what do you think that the United States can do? And do you agree with me that we're about to see some reshuffling of the country lines and the roster of players in the region?
I wish the issue was just, okay, a policy decision tomorrow morning, and then we go immediately to implement it, because it sounds that we have a deeper issue here. I mean, if I listen with an innocent ear to Dennis's introduction, it sounds bad. The generalization. Whenever it goes to generalizations, I remember others who were generalized in terms like this, that are incapable of this and incapable of that, and people in the audience applauded, and where it led us. I listened to more fine tunes, and I would say as follows. It was very difficult and still difficult to certain quarters of Christianity to accept democracy. When I listen to certain quarters of religious, evangelical, Christian, messianic fundamentalists in America and their attitude toward democracy and certain values that were supported by Dennis just a minute ago, I say they have no clue what democracy is all about. Give me the Turkish one. Give me the Egyptian one at the Tahrir Square rather than some of the radio shows and the preachers and the snake dancers around. When I listen, when I know, and this is something I know a little bit more, how difficult it was and is for Judaism and certain quarters within Judaism to merge into democracy, it's a painful, long schlep. I mean, when you go to Williamsburg, when you go to Monsey, when you go to Bnei Brak, when you read the swastikas in Mea Shearim in Jerusalem, when you see women exclusion in Beit Shemesh, we have issues. And these people are sitting in the government. These people decide for you who is a Jew. These people do not accept your marriages here in America because they are reform and conservative one. In the only democracy in the Middle East. So it's not an issue about bad-mouthing us or bad-mouthing them. It is a different issue. When Huntington came, after the wall came down in Berlin and came with the concept of the clash of civilizations, I felt that something is wrong there. It is not all of us Westerners versus all of them Muslims. It is some of us versus some of them. There is a clash of civilization, but the clash is between the civilization of democracy and the civilization of theocracy. And it happens within Judaism, within Christianity, and within Islam. And there are democratic Muslims, and there are fundamentalist Jews, and there are non-democratic Christians. So the question is not immediately to stand all of us versus all of them, but to find kind of alliances and cooperations and understandings, and having a lot of patience of perseverance for the process to take off. And I have no doubt, I mean, I talked to some of my friends in Egypt, to many of my friends in North Africa, of course in the West Bank and other places, and I have the feeling, and it's nothing more than the interviews that you two done, I simply don't talk to these high up people, I talk to Amcha, and my feeling is that once the genie of freedom is out of the bottle, nobody will be able to put it back. That's the whole story. This is what happened in Tahrir Square. This is what happening nowadays in Ramallah with all the difficulties. Now, even if you look at it from a practical point of view, America should have some kind of a backbone. I mean, at least one part of it. It was United States of America, George Bush, United States of America, who imposes elections in the West Bank. And once Hamas was elected, they said, we don't accept it. In a very democratic way, I mean, at least as democratic as Florida a couple of years ago. Okay? I mean, if you really want to introduce a notion of election and one person, one vote, don't cut it off a minute after. And even now, Israel indirectly deals with the Hamas, negotiates with the Hamas, cooperates with the Hamas, and coordinates with the Hamas. Because in the Middle East, today's extremist is tomorrow's moderate. So the question is how you talk with whom, and not how you boycott with whom, and how you generalize it in such a way that you feel so comfortable in the comfort zone of like me people only, and all the rest of them do not exist. And I understand Dennis's policies. Yes, I want to be the only one with a nuclear toy in the Middle East. And whomever will have next the potential, I will bomb them all. Turkey and Egypt and Saudi Arabia and Jordan, I will bomb them all. Come on, what kind of a realpolitik is this one? I mean, how can you leave How can you advise a government? How can you advise a policy like this? A policy should be what is the long-term existence in the region, and a real patriot is not the one who gives me a Patriot missile. A real patriot is the one who helps me to help myself, to have a long-term sustainable existence. And I'll tell you something. There was an international survey done recently. The Israelis are the 14th in the world in the measure of happiness in the world. The 14th nation in the world in the measure of happiness. The last one to believe that their country will be there in 50 years' time. So today I'm very happy. Tomorrow, oy vey. And I say a real patriot is the one who helps me to be there 50 years' time rather than having a quick buck of happiness today with missiles and weapons and hating them all.
Could I ask, this has been a really wonderful general conversation, but I want to ask a very specific question before we go on to the Middle East peace process. What do each of you think about President Obama's policy toward Iran? Do you think it is succeeding? Do you think it's insufficient? And if you think it's insufficient, what do you think we should be doing? Dennis.
I first have to respond to just one point, because I want you to be in charge. I want you to feel in charge, I do. But I'm going to use a very sharp word, and I mean it literally. You heard a libel, L-I-B-E-L. And as one who has spent much of my life fighting anti-Semitism and writing about the blood libel against the Jews in the Middle Ages, where Jews would kill Christian children and use their blood for matzah, you heard a libel of Christians virtually on the same level. And I accuse you of anti-Christian bigotry and ignorance. And in stating that evangelical Christians are not for democracy. That, sir, is a lie. And if you can back it up, I want you to back it up, or, because I don't want to put you on the spot, you said you know more about Israel, and I share your critique of much of Haredi life. I think that there are in our group true theocrats. I agree with you. Not among Christians. It was evangelical Christians, what we now call evangelical Christians, who founded the greatest free country in the world, the United States of America. It is central to Christian theology, central to American Protestant theology, that you separate church and state. They are adamant about it and have been since the founding of this country. So if you would like to offer proof, otherwise, go ahead.
Now or later?
Now.
No,
because I accused you of a libel against America's evangelical community.
First, I'm happy that we agree that some of the Jews are not perfect. Okay, it's a good thing. Now, the second is, I also accept immediately, automatically, when somebody accuses me or describes me as an ignorant, I accept it. For sure, there are more I don't know than I know. But somebody who looks at even the political reality of America that has a constitutional definition of a wall of separation between church and state, and you look how this wall becomes lower and lower in the last couple of decades, and you see how the saturation.
You were against generalizations.
Hold on.
I love it to feel in Israel.
Hold on.
I love it.
Let me make one correction, Dennis. The United States of America was not founded by evangelicals.
Who was it founded by?
Such born-again Christians did not exist 200 or 30 years ago. It was founded by people who believed in the European Enlightenment. They were, some of them, like Thomas Jefferson, were just barely Christian. Some of them were deists. Some of them were just Gnostics. And some of them were agnostic. But what Avraham was talking about what Avraham was talking about was the particularly American form of evangelical Christianity that began to develop in the burnt-over section of New York in the 1820s, and there followed a series of revivals, but really became a coherent political movement after the Roe v. Wade decision. That's a different form of Christianity than we've seen before.
Okay,
they tend to teach revelation rather than the Beatitudes. And so I find them kind of weird when it comes to Christianity as well.
Wait. No religion has any
Only when we are back to
monopoly
the issue.
on weirdness.
I just wanted to correct.
We have at least as much weirdness in Judaism as Christians have in Christianity,
Absolutely.
as
That's the
Mormons.
point.
It is
That's
not the
exactly
point
the
at
point.
all. Your point was that evangelical Christians are anti-democratic. You have given no example because there is no such example. It's a calumny and a libel unless you provide an example. I will drop it if you say, let's leave it.
Okay,
I don't want to make a big deal, but it is a big deal if it is not answered.
Let's drop
I would
it.
expect a Jew to defend Judaism.
Let's drop it.
No,
Let's drop
I want an answer. Give an example of where some of you hate evangelicals. You're bigots. I want to know, and it's a bigotry. It's okay to differ with them. It is not okay to lie about them. All right? Hold
on.
Who have been lied about should never lie about other religious groups.
Dennis, you've made your point extremely eloquently.
Fair enough.
Avram, do you have a response? Because I'd really like to go to the Obama administration's policy on Iran. I think the audience would like to hear about this too. So, Avram, yeah?
I'll give just a short one. I mean, I don't know why. I mean, I'm too tired to get angry, but or at least jet-lagged. I meet a lot of groups of whatever school of thought they're coming from, of Christian evangelical, and listen, I never made the generalization, not even this evening. I said some off and some are there. And I see the cooperation, the existential, eschatological, messianic, political, and finance cooperation between extreme right religious Christian elements and extreme right religious nationalist settlers in Israel. How they finance them, how they support them politically, how they enable them to actually perpetuate the occupation with means of theology and means of finance. And it all drawn as if from the shared biblical heritage. If this is what is being drawn from the shared biblical heritage, it is not democratic, it's fundamentalist, and if you ask me, it's not even human.
Now,
Humanistic, I'm sorry.
Okay, we're gonna let it drop there, but I think that as the moderator, I have to say that you haven't provided an answer about American evangelicals and democracy, and comparing Jewish settlers with American evangelicals, kind of like apples and freight trains.
But they're coming.
We'll get to the settlers in a minute or two. Let me just go back to Obama and Iran. Dennis.
Yeah. Dennis, what should Obama do about Iran?
Has his policy been successful?
Has his policy been successful? Those are two questions.
And what should he do if it hasn't? And what would you do?
We're getting a lot more questions.
I mean, I really feel I have to give you direction,
let me
both
just
of you,
okay.
because it's been...
All right. There are two things that I wish he had done differently. One, I wish that he had supported the Green Revolution from the outset. And no one can argue that he did. People argue that he waited a sufficient amount of time. Others say he waited too long. I think he waited too long. The United States of America should be known for a love of liberty. And if there is any chance of the removal of this terrible genocidal regime in Iran from within, that is something we should be pushing.
Wait a minute, they've committed genocide where?
No, genocide desiring. I should have added the word desiring, because they wish to destroy Israel.
Yeah, genocide,
Okay,
we have a clown up front who uses loose words. But
No, this is not
genocide,
loose.
I don't know.
No. Okay, the destruction of Israel if we call what has happened in Darfur genocide, and that is a UN word, then I think that if millions of Israeli Jews were killed, then you can use the word. But I don't want to get fixated on the word. If you prefer mass murder, fine.
Could we go back
Be
to
that
what
as it
you
may,
do?
I
What
will.
are
I
the
believe
sanctions
that
working? There are
Okay,
things
so
that are
the
happening
sanctions
for real right
okay.
now. I want you to address those.
Yes, well, no, you asked me if I thought his policy was good. I think that he should have supported the Green Revolution. I think there needs to be a radio-free Iran, just as there was a radio-free Europe. I think we should be bombarding Iran with other messages, with counter messages. I'm not sure that you would even oppose that. I'm not speaking for you, obviously, but I don't know if we would even have a difference.
Hey, Dennis, you ever hear of BBC Persia?
Yes, okay, don't start me on the BBC. Okay?
No, but BBC Persia...
Okay, all right, if BBC Persia is functioning as a radio... You asked what America should do. BBC is not run by America. So I'm answering on behalf of... The voice of America is not the powerful voice for liberty that it once was. And in any event, we should have supported the Green Revolution. We should be doing everything to undermine the regime from within that is possible to be done. I'm sorry?
Don't you think we are?
I don't think we are.
You heard of Stuxnet, right?
Yeah, yes, but Stuxnet was Israeli and we think American. Nobody has ever assumed responsibility.
I've heard from my sources, both
Good.
Israeli and Americans, say that
okay.
on the... No, you got to let me finish here occasionally. That the level of intelligence cooperation between the United States and Israel right now is unprecedented. It isn't just Stuxnet, folks. There are other computer viruses. There are even viruses that enable us to be inside their computers, so we will know if they ever decide to actually start building a bomb. And just from a fact-based perspective, I was in Iran during the Green Revolution. It was the first time in 20 years I had to run from the cops, the besieged in this case. And let me say to you this, that of those million people in the streets, along with me, most of them have very mixed feelings about the United States. They believe that we provided the chemical precursors for the mustard gas that Saddam Hussein used to create 100,000 of the 1 million casualties that Iran took during that war. Rockets rained down on Tehran. The other thing is this, that in Iran, there's a proud history and a real paranoia about Western involvement. And I can promise you, if the president had spoken up passionately at that point, it would have given the supreme leader leave to consider all the people in the streets traitors and kill them in droves. And so this was an act of prudence, sort of like George H.W. Bush not going to the Berlin Wall because he didn't want to rub the Russians' nose in it. He wanted to make a deal for united Germany. Now, I asked you about the sanctions. You think they're working?
Well, I don't have a good answer on whether they're working. And by the way, I thought your comments were right on. I think that there is a lot of ambivalence in Iran vis-a-vis the United States, and I think that part of the reason is what you said. And as Kissinger said at the time, unfortunately, when Iran fought Iraq, they should both lose. It would be like Stalin fighting Hitler, and who do you root for? I mean, in the final analysis.
I can't, really,
no,
I can't.
No, it's not.
No,
okay,
you can't.
You can't tell me what analogies I can't use.
No,
You don't have to use them, but I'm allowed to use them.
But look,
when massive evil fights massive evil, I am using the example of massive evil fighting massive evil that most people can relate to.
Somehow, I think that the people who went into the streets in Tehran on the night of 9/11 out of sympathy for our dead are not massive evil. They're just people. The mass of people in both these countries are just people.
I didn't say that they're evil. The massive Russians were not evil and the massive Germans were not evil. It's a pointless point. The regimes do evil. But the people are not evil is irrelevant. I know that.
Why would you root for war, period?
Why would I root for war, period? Because I'll tell you why. Because sometimes, unlike the bumper sticker, sometimes tragically, in this very, very difficult world we live in, where evil can triumph, war is the answer. Tragically. I wish it weren't. Because Auschwitz was liberated by soldiers, not peace activists. Okay? That's why. And therefore, sometimes war is a good thing. I don't understand the question.
And I'd agree with you. But in that case, what was accomplished by that war? The only thing that was accomplished by that war was that hundreds and hundreds of thousands of innocent people were killed, and millions of soldiers on both sides were wounded or chemical victims of the war. It did nothing to advance the course of humanity or the cause of freedom. But you and I are now debating, and I want to get back to Avraham. What's your position?
I enjoy it.
What
I mean,
Avraham?
I wish you both to lose. Okay.
Avraham, what should be the U.S. policy on Iran? And do you think what Obama is doing is working?
I agree with Dennis about the Green Revolution. The potential was out there in the street, and there should be a better communication between the West and it. Just a kind of anecdote. I have a couple of friends, I can say many, let's say 24 of friends who are Iranians in exile, that their partners in life, with their husbands and wife, are commuting. Mm-hmm. So 4 of them were in the streets during the Green Revolution, and we tweeted each other, and it was an amazing experience to hear from them in the street. As you said, they're human beings, they're friends of mine. When it's outside of that, we're going there, we are hopeful, tell your political system to say this, to say that, and eventually it was a cynical realpolitik all over, and it didn't work. So I really agree that it should have been supported much more massively now that, as I mentioned earlier, that the merchants of the traders and the merchants of the bazaar are already joining forces with the economy. There is a new potential. I hope we won't miss it. Whom should we not miss? We should not miss the younger generation. I mean, Iran is not just the Shiite, there are many minorities, and Iran is a very dual reality. In Iran, in Tehran, you can find alcohol online cheaper than in Tel Aviv. I mean, that's a fact of life. I mean,
I know. When you go
and you have, it's a contradicting reality. And the one thing to pay attention to, or one of the things to pay attention to, there was an interview given in Haaretz a couple of weeks ago with Ephraim Halevi, the former head of the Israeli Mossad. And he said Iran has a lot to do with its history, and we should dignify it. Iran looks for its status in the region and its position in the world. Don't humiliate it, respect it, and invite it into the conversation. And he is not a kind of a no-goodnik like me. I mean, he was the head of the Mossad. And having said that, we come to Obama. I know the enthusiasm of wars. I heard people so happy about going out to wars in Israel, in Europe, over here. The first day of the war is a very exciting one. The last one is a little bit, I don't remember many wars that ended up so good. And as I think I'm the only one, maybe I'm the only one on this panel who participated in few, and my children do a little bit of it, I'll be a little bit more reluctant when I use the tool of war. Leave it for last, and even then be very careful. Now, what I expect President Obama to do is to redo and accompany with deeds his Cairo speech. The Cairo speech was a fantastic opening, and then nobody walked through the door. And it's about time, if he will be reelected, if and when he will be reelected, to reopen the whole issue of America and the non-American realities. One of them is Iran. One of them is to address the street in Iran and invite it differently, as we expected him to do at the Green Revolution, and then to accompany it with deeds. As for the sanctions, it looks like the work. As for the hidden world that all you know about, I only read about it in the paper, so it's not hidden anymore, so what do I know?
We're going on here. Let me let me combine two questions because I would like to have at least a little time for Q&A, and we've been going on. But let me ask you in general about the peace process. And
process we have.
Process you have,
Process
peace
we
you
have.
don't.
Yeah.
But the question is it too late for a two-state solution, number one? I'll go to Avraham first with this. And number two, what should America's role be in this process? And question three is...
How many is two?
Listen, I'm Jewish. Come on.
It's this kind of two. Okay.
And the third question, I think, is inherent in the second, and it's the one that Dennis really wants to talk about, and that is what should be the role of American Jewry in this absolutely fraught situation?
I'll go for the first two, and then maybe I'll agree or rebuttal about Dennis's third one. For years, I thought that since the horns of both sides, the Israeli and Palestinians, are so locked, we need an external responsible adult to come and to get involved. I don't see in the near future, any responsible adult ready to walk into the region, neither the Europeans nor the Americans. So it's about us. So what is it about us? The formula of the two-state solution, it's not an eternal one. It is not a one to stay there forever. And my feeling is that its days are numbered.
Mm-hmm.
Some say it expired already.
To be replaced by what?
That's a very good question. Chaos, the continuation of the ongoing status quo, occupation, discrimination, one-state solution with discrimination against 50% of the population like we have today, or a one-state solution or federation or I don't know. But not two-state solution because it looks like there is no readiness to go about it, and it will not wait there forever. Having said that, there is one consideration that should be the Israeli consideration. I take it that many of you have been to the region, and you know how you eat falafel in the region. When I was a little boy, you gave 5 shekels to the falafel vendor, and he gave you a pita falafel, a done deal. Some balls into it, some salad, some tahina, go away, boy, next one, please. Today, it's a free market. It's a Milton Friedman of the falafel. So you have a free salad bar, and everybody loads whatever he can into the pita. Okay, now I'm an Israeli. I'm not a sucker. It's for free. I put a heap like this, 10 times the size of the pita. I don't care that half of it is on the floor as long as it's for free. Now, every Israeli would like to have 3 falafel balls into his pizza or her pizza, or his pita. I would like to have the greater land, the biblical promise, the greater land of Israel for me and for me only. I'd like to have a total, absolute, comprehensive democracy, and I would like to preserve the Jewish nature and mainly the Jewish majority of the state of Israel. Now, it doesn't work. If you want to have a total democracy, you either have to give up on the greater land of Israel or to give up about the Jewish character of the state of Israel. If you want to keep the greater land of Israel, you have to give up either democracy or the Jewish nature of the state of Israel. So strategically speaking, we have to give up one falafel ball. Which one will it be? Which one will it be? For many years, Israeli leaders from right and from left, right, it started with Menachem Begin, at the Camp David, who understood that he has to do something about the national rights of the Palestinians, of the land of Israel, continued with Shamir in Madrid, and ended up in Oslo and all of its offsprings, said we give up the greater land of Israel in order that within the Green Line, we should have a good, solid democracy, Jewish majority, and with a Jewish character. In the last couple of years, under Netanyahu's government, it looks like the greater land of Israel has a higher value than all the others. And therefore, you see a de facto annexation and a de facto expansion of the presence of Israel at the West Bank. So much so, and I don't know why it passed so unnoticed. Recently, I read somewhere that 16 intelligence organizations of the American intelligence community issued a report about the post-existence of the State of Israel in the Middle East. In the year 2020, in 20 years' time or whatever, among the things they mentioned that will bring about the disappearance of the state of Israel is the 700, I take it including Jerusalem, settlers in the occupied territories. And it opens up with a statement by no other than a conservative like Henry Kissinger, who says Israel will not be around in the year 2022. This is a wow. I don't understand why strategically and politically and existentially nobody paid attention to it, but this is the issue. It's the very existence of the state of Israel in the eyes of its own citizens, in the eyes of the region, and in the eyes of the Americans, which is the backbone of Israel. So the future of the peace process depends a lot about the understanding of the Israeli masses as well as the Israeli leadership. What is the real key or highway to a sustainable long-term Israel in the region? If we don't pay attention to it, we just continue as is, it's the end of the state of Israel the way we know it. What would replace it? The jury is out.
Dennis?
It will probably surprise many of you, and perhaps you certainly. I largely agree. I
failed the game.
I want a Jewish state, and I want a democracy, and I have no desire for a Jewish state to have half of its population people who are not Jewish, who have no intention of assimilating into that state as people assimilate into the United States and take on an American identity. The difference between us is not in what we want in this regard. I would like two states. It's who we blame. That's our difference, I think. I blame the Palestinians, and you blame Israel, or you blame both. I blame the Palestinians 99%. They were given the chance to have their own state and decided that it was preferable to blow up Jewish children in pizza parlors. That is from Bill Clinton, not a conservative.
Let's go on, Dennis, to your concerns about America's role in this process. If you believe that there should be a two-state solution and that there should be a peace process, what role do we play? And let me ask you, what role does the U.S. government, should the U.S. government play, and what role should American Jews play?
Okay. The United States should play one role, in my opinion, and that is to make it clear that it will not allow Israel to be destroyed. That is the greatest role. That, ironically, is the only possible role America can play, in my opinion, to actually further peace if there is any chance. Because the moment there is a perception of a weakening of America's support for Israel, you invite the very thing none of us here, left or right, wants. So, beyond that, it is for the two parties to get together and make peace. And if they can't, then they can't. And you go on. All of my life, I find this hard to believe, but I am now 64 years old. All of my life, I have heard Israel has a limited time to have peace and a second state, certainly since 73, if not even 67 in some quarters, but certainly 73. And it has never turned out that way. I'm not saying it isn't true. I wish tomorrow that the Palestinians awakened and said, this is ridiculous. The Quran itself recognizes Jerusalem. It recognizes itself that there is a Jewish people and that there is a Jewish land. We're crazy preoccupying ourselves. We could have a federation with Israel and we could become the European Union of the Middle East, although that's a poor analogy today, but still. I wish that they did. But they're telling me, and they would even tell you, there is no Jewish people. They don't believe it. There is only a Jewish religion. There is no Jewish people. We have no roots there. They really believe that. I debated as a student, a junior in England, junior year in college. I was at the university in England, and I debated a Jordanian consul. And I'll never forget it, and it's never changed. Whenever I have debated pro-Palestinian or pro-Arab spokesmen, it's been the same thing since then. And that year was 1969-70, before the 73 war. And I looked at the audience, all of whom basically not Jewish, at the University of Leeds in England, and I said, here's the difference. I and virtually every Jew I know, American, British, or Israeli, recognize that the Palestinians have a right to their own state and have a history in this area. They don't believe we have a right to a Jewish state. Am I right or wrong, Consul General? And that ended the debate. I won the debate. I won all the debates against Arab spokesmen because it's easy to win the debate. They don't believe we belong there. We believe they do belong there. And until you have that symmetry, not America, not Russia, not China, not El Salvador can do a damn thing about it.
I have some.
All right.
I have some.
All right, we're gonna, Avram, you can respond to that, and then I really want to go to questions from the audience.
As for El Salvador,
Maybe
listen,
El Salvador. Maybe El Salvador.
listen. I take it that if I like to take your previous methodology, I will say somebody will sue you because you say, as if all of them say there is not such a thing like a Jewish people. So let me, at least out of them, cut off a group. I just come here. I told you I was in Istanbul. That was the beginning. I spent the weekend in Vienna. I participated there in a very interesting, maybe the only one now in the realm of an Israeli and Palestinian group, exploring together various things that we discuss here today. And the most fundamental one, including the resolutions we are working on, it's not a political, it's a more, I would say, meta-political thing, is the total recognition of why they're getting wider and wider quarters among the Palestinians, that the Jews are there to stay, there is a right for the Jewish state, there is a right of the Jewish people, and here is our rights, and there should be a conversation of rights rather than a conversation of guilt and accusations and generalizations. So very soon you might find yourself with empty-handed in these debates of yours, because there is a growing segment of the younger generation of the Palestinian people.
Great.
Okay?
I hope you're right.
Yeah,
I hope
okay,
you're right.
no,
I don't want to win those debates.
No.
I
want you to win every
peace.
debate. It makes me stronger when you win debates.
No, it doesn't.
The second one is, you ask about the American role. I'll tell you what is my concern, and I take it that the applauders in this room will not like it very much. In the last couple of years, because of the politics of the State of Israel and the Israeli government, Israel is becoming less and less bipartisan issue in America and become a very political, and if we shall continue like this, it will be one-sided issue only. It will belong to the Republicans only, and all the rest of them will go wherever they go. The way my prime minister gets involved and steers the American politics and the American presidential election, maybe it's good for America, or maybe it's good for one of the candidates. It's bad for the case for America, unequivocally, for both sides of the aisle, to support this Israel, to leave Israel beyond and above any political controversy within America. And I feel this deteriorates. The second is, what should be the role of America? The role of America should stop one day to say we are here to ensure that Israel will not be erased, etc., because it's not going to be erased. It's a strong, viable, it's unbelievable how strong Israel is. Unbelievable. This is not the issue. The issue is the quality of the existence in the Middle East. So the role of America is not about the mere physical existence. For this, we don't need it so much, the way it was eloquently expressed by Dennis here, but to say, Israelis, we are here if you want to help you and the Palestinians, if you want to have a better quality of life the way both nations deserve. That's the rule. This is
Okay.
what Carter did. This is what Clinton did. This I hope what Obama will do in his next term.
Okay, let's turn this.
I told you.